Mystic Heaven Sect, Absolute Sword Peak. I had just finished my secluded cultivation and was watering newly transplanted sword orchids in the back mountain. Just then, a transmission talisman flashed like a meteor, stopping precisely in front of the mountain gate. With a casual wave of my hand, the transmission talisman shattered, and a message entered my sea of consciousness. Peak Lord of Absolute Sword Peak, an urgent matter. Please proceed to the Enforcement Hall immediately. Enforcement Hall? A faint arc appeared at the corner of my lips. When I first entered the sect, I was young and headstrong and often went to the Enforcement Hall because even in the largest sects, disputes between disciples were inevitable. In the nascent soul stage, I occasionally went to the Enforcement Hall because the vast majority of disputes were resolved before I even entered the hall. In the Transformation God stage, I rarely went to the Enforcement Hall because it was always the other party's fault. Now that I have reached the Great Ascension stage, what matter or person in this Mystic Heaven sect is worthy of me personally going to the Enforcement Hall to await judgment? I formed a sword with my fingers and casually wrote, "I am free now. You may come to Absolute Sword Peak. I have only 1 hour. I will not wait beyond that." Sword intent condensed into words, piercing through the air. I picked up the jade pot and continued to leisurely water the sword orchids. Not long after sending the message, several dozen cultivators gathered below Absolute Sword Peak, making quite a commotion. The leader was none other than the current sect master of Mystic Heaven Sect, Murong Lien. Murong Lien was clearly extremely dissatisfied that I had not personally gone to the Enforcement Hall. Her face was cold and frosty. As soon as she landed, she took the initiative to speak, her voice sharp as a blade. "Peak Lord of Absolute Sword Peak, your chief disciple, Chun Tian, has committed a heinous crime. Not only did he steal the treasure of the newly entered disciple, Jiang Yun, but he also attacked and injured people with cruel methods and extremely vile nature. Today, this sect master is here to uphold justice." As she spoke, 2 Enforcement Hall disciples escorted a person forward behind her. The person was dressed in the clothing of a direct disciple of Absolute Sword Peak, with a calm and unperturbed face and empty, indifferent eyes, none other than my only disciple, Chun Tian. My gaze swept over the indignant crowd, finally landing on the heavily injured disciple. My voice was calm. "Since you accuse my disciple of theft and assault, where is the evidence?" "Evidence?" Murong Lien coldly snorted. "The victim disciple, Jiang Yun, is the best witness." Saying that, she pointed to a pale-faced young man beside her, with traces of blood still at the corner of his mouth. Seeing me look at him, the young man endured the pain and respectfully saluted, his voice weak but stubborn. "Junior Jiang Yun greets Senior Absolute Sword." Speaking to this point, Jiang Yun looked at Chun Tian. A trace of fear flashed in his eyes at just the right moment. But then he pursed his lips and grit his teeth, saying, "Senior brother Chun Tian, he stole Junior's jade pendant. I saw it with my own eyes." After being discovered, he was so ashamed and angry that he injured Junior severely with a sword, and threatened me that if I dared to speak out, he would make sure I had no place in the sect. If it was just an ordinary object, Junior would have endured it, but that jade pendant is a token of love given to me by Senior Sister Chu, concerning a promise invaluable. Therefore, even if it means my death, I must speak out. Saying that, Jiang Yun opened his clothes, revealing a tragic sword wound on his chest. And the killing intent emanating from a sword wound was clearly consistent with the sword worn by Chun Tian. As soon as he finished speaking, a heroic young woman wearing an enforcement robe walked out beside Jiang Yun. She was precisely the senior sister who gave the token to Jiang Yun, Chu Qingqing. Chu Qingqing carefully supported his swaying figure, her eyes full of heartache and undisguised indignation. She raised her head and glared at Chun Tian, speaking in a clear voice. "Senior Absolute Sword, sect leader, everyone, senior and junior brothers and sisters, please understand. Disciple Chu Qingqing can testify to this matter. In the past, when I went out to train, I encountered a great disaster, and fortunately, a benefactor saved my life at the cost of his own. To repay his kindness, I split my family's inherited spiritual treasure jade pendant in two and gave it to my benefactor, promising that with this token, he could enter the Xiantian sect to find me, and I would do my best to help him. But I never expected that senior brother Qiantian would find out about this from who knows where, and forcibly seize the token from junior brother Jiang Yun, attempting to impersonate him and deceive me. If junior brother Jiang Yun hadn't risked his life to expose him, I would have almost been deceived by this hypocrite, and my innocence would have been ruined. After speaking, she knelt straight down towards me, her voice resolute. Senior Absolute Sword, this junior knows that your Absolute Sword Peak only has one disciple, and it may be difficult to make a decision, but what Qiantian has done is outrageous, and an outrage against all that is right, truly a disgrace to the righteous path. This junior implores senior to act justly and selflessly, remove Qiantian from the position of chief disciple, abolish his cultivation, expel him from the mountain, to uphold the rules of the sect, and to deter others from following his example. This impassioned accusation instantly ignited the emotions of all the disciples present. Good heavens, I didn't expect Qiantian to be such a bastard, actually thinking of using such methods to deceive senior sister's feelings. Arbitrarily bullying disciples. It's a disgrace to my Xiantian sect. If I were Qiantian, I would have already committed suicide. How could I still have the face to stay here? Alas, Qiantian has taken care of senior sister Chu for more than just a day or two. I thought the two of them could achieve fruition and become Tao partners. Who knew Qiantian would do such despicable things? Senior Absolute Sword has been wise his whole life. How could he accept such a disciple? Abolish him. Drive him out of the mountain. He doesn't deserve to be our senior brother. Looking at this scene of impassioned anger, my disciple and I exchanged a look, and we could both see the speechless expression in each other's eyes. I remember when I entered the Transformation God stage and took the position of Elder of Absolute Sword Peak, the elders of the sect took turns to persuade me, saying that the master of a peak could not be without disciples, and that I needed to cultivate talents for the sect and continue the lineage. However, when it came to teaching disciples, I was brilliant in 9 out of 10 areas, completely clueless in the last. To avoid delaying the future of others, I hadn't accepted any disciples for several successive recruitment ceremonies. Because of this, the sect elders would often come to bother me at Solitary Sword Peak. Helpless, I took the opportunity of going out to slay demons, randomly picked a corpse that hadn't been dead for long, spent some time refining it into a lifelike puppet, brought it back to Solitary Sword Peak, and named it Qiantian. Although the elders discovered the truth in less than a century, I had already reached the tribulation transcending stage by then, and they were too embarrassed to raise their voices in front of me. Thus, the title of Chief Disciple of Solitary Sword Peak has been held by this puppet ever since. Qiantian is my shadow, a clone. When I have nothing to do, I occasionally divide my consciousness to control him to travel through mountains and rivers, experiencing different states of mind. If I go into seclusion, I set a few simple behavioral instincts, entrusting them to spiritual energy for automatic management. How could such a puppet forcibly seize treasures from others? How could he bully a female cultivator? Of course, nothing is absolute. Back then, when I made the puppet Qiantian, I only learned a smattering of skills from the puppet peak. I haven't kept up with it over the years, so it's not impossible for something unexpected to happen. In a flash of thought, I quietly retrieved the recent memories of the puppet Qiantian. However, just one glance, and my gaze instantly darkened. The half of the jade pendant in Qiantian's hand was indeed obtained from someone else, but it wasn't taken by force, but as a collateral. Last night, that newly joined disciple Jiang Yun sought out Qiantian, speaking earnestly, claiming that he had long admired Solitary Sword Peak and revered senior brother Qiantian like a god. He took out that half of the jade pendant, saying that it was an important keepsake and was willing to temporarily pledge it to Qiantian. only asking to borrow senior brother's famous sword to see it for a moment, and would return it immediately. And coincidentally, the program I set for the puppet Shintian was to help sect disciples as much as possible when they asked for help. Therefore, the puppet Shintian readily lent him the sword, who knew that after borrowing the sword, Jiang Yun unhesitatingly slashed himself with it, and then fled directly. The puppet Shintian had no intelligence, only knowing to complete the sword-lending transaction, take back the jade pendant, and return to his cave. Who would have thought that the next morning, this seriously injured Jiang Yun would bring Chu Qingqing from the enforcement hall, staging such a tragic scene, directly capturing Chun Tian in the act of catching the stolen goods. Speaking of this disciple, Chu Qingqing from the enforcement hall, she is also a strange person. She is one of the few cultivators in the Xiantian sect who has noticed the behavioral logic of the puppet Qin Yun. On weekdays, she often finds some excuses to pretend to be weak in places that Chun Tian passes by, triggering the puppet's helping behavior, from which she tricks him out of a lot of pills, spirit stones, and even cultivation guidance. Over time, in the eyes of outsiders, it really seemed as if Chun Tian was deeply in love with her, granting her every request. And after discovering that she could easily squeeze benefits from the chief disciple of Solitary Sword Peak just by playing the victim, her initial admiration had long turned into pure exploitation. Now, these two, one taking out the keepsake, one appearing to testify, singing in harmony, coupled with the wounds indeed caused by Qin Tian's sword, and a carefully choreographed love-hate entanglement, have actually made this frame-up so realistic. Seeing that I hadn't spoken for a long time, everyone present couldn't help but feel nervous. Solitary Sword Peak, the undisputed #1 peak of a Xiantian sect. Its power is so great that it even surpasses Heavenly Peak, where the sect master resides. If I insist on protecting Xiantian, even if he angers the crowd, in the end, it will likely be a big show with a minor consequence, at most a compensation of some precious resources. Thinking of this, the disciples' gazes towards the puppet Qin Yun became even more disgusted, as if looking at a pile of mud that couldn't be plastered on a wall. Even the gazes towards me were mixed with a hint of doubt and barely concealed indignation, as if I had already colluded with the scum in their eyes, defiling this senior's reputation. Just then, an unexpected event occurred. Jiang Yun, who was originally on his last breath, suddenly trembled violently, spitting out a large mouthful of blood, and fell backward. "Junior brother Jiang, what's wrong? Hold on." Chu Qingqing was frightened, her face paling, and she frantically tried to catch his collapsing body, her voice tinged with a sob. The disciples erupted in an uproar, cries of alarm rising. Sect Master Murong Lian's expression also changed drastically. With a flick of her sleeve, an exquisite healing pill with a fragrant aroma appeared on her fingertips, ready to step forward to help. However, before anyone could approach, countless sharp and unparalleled golden sword energies suddenly burst forth from inside Jiang Yun's body. The sword energies soared into the sky, tearing apart the clouds, emitting a metallic clang, its momentum magnificent, causing the surrounding disciples' swords to hum on their own. This is an experienced inner sect disciple's pupils constricted, and he exclaimed in horror, sword energy erupting spontaneously from the body, attracting the phenomenon of myriad swords paying homage. This is a sign of the awakening of the Gung metal sword body, recorded only in ancient times. Could it be that it was Chun Tian's sword? That's it. Junior brother Jiang Yun's sword body was originally dormant, but now he was struck by Chun Tian's sword, which contained the sharp intent of an absolute sword. Not only did it fail to kill junior brother Jiang, but it also acted like forging iron, completely activating the long-dormant but unawakened Gung metal sword body essence within him. Surviving a great disaster is followed by great fortune. This is heaven's will. Jiang Yun slowly woke up in a golden light. Feeling the surging new power within his body, his face first showed disbelief, then turned into uncontrollable ecstasy. He grabbed Chu Qingqing's hand beside him, too excited to speak coherently. Senior sister, I am. You heard right. Junior brother Jiang. Chu Qingqing was also overjoyed, and she tightly grasped his hand in return, her voice trembling with excitement. Misfortune turned into blessing. You are a Gung metal sword body, 1 in 10,000 years. A natural emperor of the sword path. You have awakened. This earth-shattering reversal caused all the onlookers to boil with excitement. Under the gaze of the crowd, someone in the crowd excitedly shouted, "The position of Chief of Absolute Sword Peak belongs to the capable. The Gung metal sword body is rare in 1,000, no 10,000 years. This is heaven's will for junior brother Jiang. He is destined to inherit the absolute sword lineage." That's right. Please, Senior Absolute Sword, make a clear decision. Abolish Chun Tian, who is morally flawed, and accept junior brother Jiang Yun, who is pure-hearted and favored by heaven, as your true disciple. We have heard that Senior Absolute Sword. You were fearless and unyielding when you were young. Now junior brother Jiang Yun is extraordinarily talented, and he dares to risk his life to expose evil. His heart and talent are exactly the same as yours back then. This is destiny. Please, Senior, choose a talented person for the eternal foundation of Absolute Sword Peak. Please, Senior, follow the will of heaven. Do not mislead yourself. The shouts rose higher and higher. Sect Master Murong Lien even stepped forward, her tone unprecedentedly strong, with undisguised threat. Elder Absolute Sword. Although Absolute Sword Peak is detached from worldly affairs, it is still part of the Xian Tian sect and must abide by the sect's rules and the will of the people. If you insist on protecting a scum like Chun Tian today, ignoring the will of heaven and the people, this sect master will never let it go. Chu Qingqing supported the weak but radiant Jiang Yun. Their eyes both flashed with immense anticipation as they looked intently at me. Looking at Chu Qingqing, whose lips hinted at a trace of smugness, and then at Jiang Yun, who appeared weak but whose eyes were burning with expectation and greed, as well as the disciples around them who had been stirred up with fervor, and the sect Master Murong Lien, who looked solemn and waited for me to destroy my own kin. I suddenly smiled. The originally cold and stern eyebrows relaxed, and the forbidding sword intent around me seemed to soften slightly. I gently raised my hand, suppressing all the noise. What you all say is very reasonable. Everyone immediately revealed expressions of ecstatic joy. In Murong Lien's eyes, a trace of satisfaction flashed. Under the gaze of everyone, I looked at the expressionless puppet Shintian, my tone abruptly turning cold. My Absolute Sword Peak truly cannot tolerate such an unfilial, unrighteous, and disloyal person. From today onward, Chun Tian is no longer a disciple of my Absolute Sword Peak. He has no further connection with my Absolute Sword Peak. With the judgment made, a heavy stone fell from everyone's hearts. I then turned to Jiang Yun, who was trembling slightly with excitement, my smile becoming more kind and amiable, and beckoned. Jiang Yun, you have been wronged. Heaven's will is clear, granting you a supreme sword physique. This is your destined fate with the Absolute Sword Peak. Today, I shall comply with heaven's will and the hearts of the people, and accept you as my personal disciple. The joy in Jiang Yun's heart surged like a tidal wave, almost bursting through his chest. He forcibly suppressed it, stepped forward quickly, and respectfully kowtowed 3 times heavily before me. Disciple Jiang Yun pays respects to master. Ha! Good disciple, no need for formalities. I smiled, reached out my hand, and gently pressed it on the crown of his head. A wisp of divine sense probed in, carefully sensing the foundation of his Gung metal sword body and the meridians throughout his body. Indeed, boundless innate Gung metal energy was contained within his limbs and bones. Sword intent arose spontaneously, resonating with the great Tao of heaven and earth. Top-tier talent for body snatching. Compared to the Chun Tian puppet I casually crafted back then, he's 1,000 times, 10,000 times better. I nodded slightly in satisfaction, the kindness in my eyes almost overflowing. Immediately, my expression turned stern, and I looked at the puppet Chun Tian, who was standing there like a wooden statue, my voice suddenly turning sharp, lamenting his unworthiness. Chun Tian, you wicked disciple, seizing your junior brother's precious treasure and damaging the reputation of the sect, you have simply disregarded your master's teachings. Your crime is unforgivable. Now that you're no longer a member of my sect, quickly dig out your sword bone yourself, along with your natal spiritual sword, and hand them over to your junior brother Jiang Yun as compensation and atonement. These words were like a thunderclap. All the disciples present, including several elders, were stunned. They had thought that expelling Chun Tian from the sect was the greatest victory. But who would have thought that I, as their master, would be even more ruthless and decisive than all of them combined? Not only would he be stripped of his identity, but he would also have to personally dig out the sword bone that formed the foundation of his path, along with the natal spiritual sword that he cultivated alongside his life, and offer them up? What kind of punishment was this? This was clearly severing his foundation, cutting off his future, 100 times more cruel than directly killing him. Even those who were filled with righteous indignation felt that the punishment was a bit too severe. Jiang Yun was the first to react. He forcibly suppressed the wild joy in his heart, and the immense greed for the sword bone and natal sword quickly bowed to me and tried to put on a pitiful and unbearable appearance. Master, you can't. Senior brother Chun Tian. He was only temporarily blinded by love and made a big mistake. Now that he has been severely punished, please forgive him this once for the sake of past affection and give him a chance to reform. Don't plead for him anymore. This kind of inferior disciple is not worth pitying. I snorted coldly, my tone unquestionable. Wretch, aren't you going to act? Do you want your master to do it myself? The puppet Chun Tian received my divine sense command, and without saying a word, used his fingers as a sword and stabbed into his own back without hesitation. The sound of painful tendons and bones tearing apart rang out, and blood instantly stained his robes red. He was expressionless, as if he felt no pain at all, and forcibly pulled out a section of spine containing vast sword intent from his body. That was the core of supporting this puppet, what I call the sword bone. Afterwards, he unbound the spiritual and innate sword from his waist. With both hands, he held the sword bone and the spirit sword, walked step by step to Jiang Yun, and presented them. Witnessing this bloody scene, and looking at Chun Tian's empty eyes and indifferent attitude, all the surrounding disciples couldn't help but shudder, their hearts filled with unease. He's actually so ruthless to himself. It's just that the truth came out, and he knows his sins are heavy. He wants to use this self-mutilation to gain sympathy. If he hadn't been exposed today, would he have done this? Retribution. This is retribution. Chun Tian, your day has finally come. Jiang Yun looked at the sword bone and spirit sword being offered to him, still carrying warm blood and pure sword intent, and the greedy light in his eyes almost materialized. But he still retained a shred of rationality, fearing that this overly smooth process and ruthless methods would leave an impression of cold-heartedness in my heart, and a look of struggle and hesitation appeared on his face. Just then, sect leader Morong Lien strode forward, snatched the sword bone and spirit sword from Chun Tian's hands, and unceremoniously shoved them into Jiang Yun's grasp, her tone decisive. The sect's rewards and punishments have their own rules. This is his way to atone for his sins. What should be yours is yours. Take it. Don't have any psychological burden. Chu Qingqing also hurriedly encouraged him from the side, her eyes flashing with excitement. Yes, junior brother Jiang, this is the reward you deserve for upholding the righteous path and bravely exposing the wicked. You earned it with your life. I even stepped forward and held his shoulders. Come, disciple, your teacher will personally help you refine this bone and this sword. You're the new chief of Absolute Sword Peak. How can you not have the strength to suppress your peers? Jiang Yun, surrounded and praised in the center, holding the sword bone and sword in his hands, felt a little giddy for a moment. Things were too smooth, so smooth that he found it unbelievable. The position of chief of the Xintian sect's #1 peak, Absolute Sword Peak, which was rumored to be out of reach, had fallen into his hands so easily. Moreover, Absolute Sword Senior, who was rarely seen, was actually going to personally help him refine them. The overwhelming joy and the expansion of ambition instantly shattered the last trace of doubt. His future was simply bright. Yes, Master, this disciple will definitely not disappoint you. Jiang Yun no longer hesitated, directly put the sword bone into his dantian, and began to refine it. At the same time, I sent out a wisp of divine sense, straight to Jiang Yun's sea of consciousness. At this moment, in Jiang Yun's sea of consciousness, Jiang Yun's soul, as small as a grain of rice, looked at the star-like divine sense in front of him and opened his mouth with awe. Master, Master, what should this disciple do next? I smiled slightly. My dear disciple, you don't need to do anything. Relax your mind and trust your teacher completely. This is the supreme method of imparting skills that your teacher has spent countless efforts researching and can directly instill my thousands of years of cultivation insights into the source of your soul. At that time, you will have a vision and knowledge far surpassing ordinary cultivators, and there will be no more bottlenecks on the path of cultivation. This! Jiang Yun was first filled with unspeakable ecstasy, but then he couldn't help but react, worried. But Master, my soul is weakened, Bukan. I'm afraid it can't withstand your 1,000 years of experience. Can't withstand it. My divine sense incarnation shrugged indifferently. Then there's nothing I can do. That's your problem. What? Jiang Yun's soul was stunned at first. Immediately afterwards, he trembled violently, finally completely realizing what was happening. Looking at the surging sea of memories that threatened to completely engulf him, he let out a desperate scream. Master, what are you doing? I'm your disciple. This will obliterate my soul. Can you take it slow? Please, take it slow. His soul was being frantically torn apart and diluted within the golden sea of memories, like a small boat in a storm on the verge of being completely shattered. I watched his fading will, the warmth on my face receding, leaving only cold indifference. After all this, why pretend to be innocent? You didn't really think that your clumsy scheme to frame Xintian could deceive me, did you? Jiang Yun's last remaining shred of will froze completely, as if struck by lightning upon hearing these words. Boundless fear overwhelmed him. You knew all along. If you knew, why did you still kill Xintian? He was your personal disciple. Simple. My divine sense incarnation's tone was calm and unwavering, as if speaking of a trivial matter, because Xintian was merely a puppet body that I casually refined. Now that you, a gung metal sword physique, have willingly offered yourself as my new vessel, what reason do I have to refuse? A puppet. Xintian, the chief disciple of Absolute Sword Peak, was actually a puppet. So his carefully planned schemes, his seemingly seamless frame-up, were nothing more than a clown's performance in the other's eyes. Realizing this despairing truth, Jiang Yun's emotions completely collapsed. No, Senior Absolute Sword. Ancestor. I was wrong. I was blinded by greed. My mind was clouded. Please spare my life. Spare me. I'm willing to be your slave. Boundless regret, despair, anger, and unwillingness transformed into a final, tragic wail and plea for mercy. But I simply watched coldly as his last shred of will was completely swallowed and crushed by the vast torrent of memories, disappearing without a trace. Then, with a thought, boundless spiritual power poured out from my body, skillfully modifying the gung metal sword physique, a rare find in 1,000 years. Decades since I had personally refined a body, my skills were not only undiminished, but had become even more exquisite due to the advancement of my cultivation. The sword bone, serving as the control core, was perfectly embedded into this new body, completely fusing with the gung metal sword physique's origin. A moment later, Jiang Yun slowly opened his eyes. I and the puppet exchanged a smile. Not bad, it worked. Feeling the powerful aura emanating from the puppet Jiang Yun, Chu Qingqing's eyes lit up, and she eagerly stepped forward. Sect leader Murong Lien nodded in satisfaction, her gaze towards me softening a bit. It seems that the lineage of Absolute Sword Peak is still worth continuing. After speaking, she naturally turned to the newly born Jiang Yun and extended her hand. Jiang Yun, although you have joined Absolute Sword Peak, you are still new to the inner sect and unfamiliar with many sect matters. In the coming days, you should first follow this sect leader back to Heavenly Peak to cultivate for a period of time. This sect leader will personally guide you to help you quickly familiarize yourself with the sect rules. A crisp, loud slapping sound abruptly interrupted Murong Lien's words. Under the astonished gazes of the crowd, Jiang Yun had mercilessly slapped away the sect leader's outstretched hand. He was expressionless, took a step forward, and respectfully stood behind me, with the puppet Qin Tian on my left and right, like two guardian deities, as if Murong Lien's words were no different from street noise. Murong Lien's hand froze in midair. She was completely stunned. It took several breaths for her to react. Her face was instantly covered with frost, and her phoenix eyes glared fiercely, filled with disbelief at Jiang Yun. You dare to attack me, the sect master? So what? The puppet Jiang Yun raised his eyes, his gaze arrogant. I am a direct disciple of the Absolute Sword Peak. With my master here, you still want me to go with you to the sect master's peak? This is the utmost disrespect to my master. If my cultivation wasn't low right now, based on this action alone, I should kill you on the spot to uphold my master's prestige. As soon as these words came out, the whole place was silent. Everyone stared dumbfounded at this suddenly unfamiliar Jiang Yun. Junior brother has always been humble, polite, gentle, and kind, loved by everyone. How could he suddenly become so domineering and cold? He even dared to say such rebellious words as kill you on the spot to the sect master? Junior brother Jiang Yun, you're crazy? How can you talk to the sect master like that? Chu Qingqing was the first to recover, her face full of shock and panic, and she cried out, "What are you, daring to talk to me like that?" The puppet Jiang Yun sneered and drew the long sword in his hand. A flash of gung metal sword energy instantly slashed towards Chu Qingqing. The incident was too sudden, the speed too fast, and even Sect Master Murong Lien couldn't react in time. Chu Qingqing didn't have time to make any defenses at all. Her protective spiritual light was torn apart like paper. A burst of blood mist exploded in her chest, and she screamed as she flew backwards, crashing heavily in the distance, her life or death unknown. The whole place was silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Everyone was stunned by this sudden and ruthless attack. Murong Lien turned her head sharply, staring fixedly at the ruthless Jiang Yun, both shocked and angry, her voice trembling with extreme fury. "What did you do? Have you forgotten your agreement with Qingqing yesterday? Have you forgotten what you said to me?" "Sorry." The puppet Jiang Yun apologized without any remorse. "Master just transferred his power to me. Now, my mind is filled with Master's cultivation insights. Nothing else. But I guess it wasn't anything important, so forgetting it is fine. Cultivation insights. Power transfer." Murong Lien repeated these words blankly. Suddenly, she seemed to realize something extremely terrifying. She abruptly turned her head to look at me, her voice sharp and filled with shock and anger. "What power transfer? Yiju, this isn't a power transfer at all. You're seizing his body. It's a demonic act. You dare to seize the body of a disciple. You are unworthy of being a peak lord of a righteous, immortal sect." The surrounding disciples also reacted when they heard this. So, right under everyone's noses, junior brother Jiang Yun, who had just awakened the gung metal sword body and was hailed as the chosen one, was no longer himself. He was seized by his new master, the absolute Sword Peak Lord, on the spot. Looking at the faces below filled with shock and disbelief, I couldn't help but laugh. That's right, it's body seizing. But my absolute Sword Peak has never had any real disciples from beginning to end. All we have are puppets. Since you all say that this puppet of mine is oppressing disciples, stealing treasures, and even can't wait to promote this pure and kind new disciple to replace him, then I might as well satisfy you. However, it seems that you all are not quite satisfied with the result. As I spoke, the puppet Chen Tian, who should have had his sword bone removed and be seriously injured and on the verge of death, stood up without any hindrance. He walked steadily to the side of the puppet Jiang Yun, the two standing side by side, equally expressionless, equally empty-eyed, equally emanating the cold, deathly sword intent of the absolute sword. Everyone was completely dumbfounded at this scene. How is this possible? Senior brother, Chen Tian, is actually a puppet. No wonder senior brother Chen Tian never had any emotional fluctuations, no matter what happened. No wonder he could self-excavate his sword bone and offer his natal sword without hesitation when the Peak Lord gave the order. So he's not even human. A puppet refined by a Mahayana cultivator. How could he possibly snatch something from a Foundation Establishment Junior? Is there even need to ask? It was all Jiang Yun directing and acting. He cut himself and framed senior brother Chen Tian. Heavens, he's so vicious, just to climb up to absolute Sword Peak. Looking at Jiang Yun, whose eyes were cold and completely different from the Jiang Yun in her memory, Murong Lian's last shred of sanity completely collapsed. She let out a shrill, desperate scream, her beautiful face violently distorted by extreme resentment. Chen Tian is a puppet. Why didn't you say so sooner? Why did you use such cruel means to harm Jiang Yun? Yi Ju, you fiend! I glanced at her coldly, sneering. Murong Lian, as the master of a sect, if you really wanted to find out the truth and see through that kid's clumsy framing, it would be easy. But did you investigate deeply at the time? You can arbitrarily judge right and wrong according to your preferences when you enforce the law yourself. But when others take action, you expect them to take care of your emotions. Murong Lian, what are you worth? Before the words were finished, I casually waved my hand, as if brushing away dust. Even though I held back, Murong Lian's physical body was still blasted apart by this palm. Amidst a shrill scream, only a trace of her true spirit remained, horrified and desperate to escape. Unfortunately, she hadn't gone 2 steps before I caught her in the soul lamp. The lamp flame burst into life, Murong Lian's twisted and painful face flickering in the flame, emitting a silent wail. Immediately afterwards, I flicked my finger, and a sword chi flashed past, and Chu Qingqing, who was seriously injured and unconscious in the distance, didn't even utter a sound before her physical body shattered, and her soul was forcibly detained. You are high-ranking members of the sect, using conspiracy and framing for your own selfish ends, attempting to manipulate the inheritance of my absolute Sword Peak, unworthy of being righteous. It would be too cheap to simply annihilate your bodies and souls. Burn and repent in this soul lamp for 300 years as a warning to others. Finally, my gaze fell on the group of disciples who were already paralyzed with fear on the ground, shaking like sieves. These disciples had personally witnessed the sect master they revered in the past being slapped into pieces, their true spirit extracted and burned in the lamp, and even that senior sister Chu suffering the same fate, which was worse than having their souls scattered. Seeing me look over, they immediately kowtowed like pounding garlic, their cries and pleas for mercy ringing out in a chorus. Senior, spare us. Senior, please spare us. We are ignorant. We were deceived by villains. We were completely unaware of the truth. Yes, Senior, we all listened to Jiang Yun and the sect master. We didn't mean to. Senior, the law doesn't punish the masses. Please, for the sake of our youth and ignorance, be merciful and spare us this time. The law doesn't punish the masses? I sighed softly, my voice devoid of any emotion. You young disciples have had it too easy for too long. You've ruined your brains. The weak uniting should be for mutual support, resisting the invasion of the strong, not for you to think you have the upper hand in numbers and proactively provoke and slander someone you can't afford to offend. No one taught you this principle, but now, this seat will teach you personally. I looked down at them and asked calmly, "Do you understand?" The disciples nodded frantically, tears streaming down their faces. "We understand. We understand. Thank you for your teachings, Senior. We will definitely remember them." Ahem. I nodded in satisfaction. Good. Then in your next life, don't forget. W.H. What? The hope and pleading on the disciples' faces instantly froze, replaced by extreme horror and despair. Chen Tian. Yes. The puppet Chen Tian, who was standing by, bowed and accepted the order. In the next moment, his figure darted out like a ghost, directly into the group of collapsed disciples. Sword light flashed, mercilessly reaping lives. Screams, wails, pleas for mercy, curses, various sounds briefly arose, then quickly faded into nothingness. Except for a few disciples from the enforcement hall who had initially escorted Chen Tian, clearly acting against their will, who were spared by the sword chi and sat paralyzed to the side, their faces drained of color. All the others who had joined in the clamor, fanned the flames, and kicked them when they were down were turned into a mist of blood, their bodies and souls destroyed. People must always pay the price for their words and actions, especially in this cultivation world where the strong prey on the weak and the strong are respected. I still remember when my cultivation was low, I was robbed and chased after. I endured it bitterly until my realm far surpassed my opponent, and then I was able to kill my way back, exterminate his entire family, and avenge my humiliation. How can you think that apologizing and acting pitiful will allow you to escape unscathed? There's no such easy thing in the world. After clearing away these noisy ants, I moved my divine sense and directly dragged several elders who were responsible for sect affairs year-round out of their caves. The elders were a little dazed when they first appeared, but after listening to my simple explanation, their faces turned pale and cold sweat poured down. They couldn't imagine how someone could create such a big mess. Soon, the soul lamp, fueled by Murong Lian Soul, was solemnly enshrined in the most conspicuous position in the enforcement hall, with her crimes engraved under the lamp base as a warning to future generations. The selection of a new sect leader was immediately put on the agenda. The elders unanimously stated, "The strength of cultivation is secondary. The most important thing is integrity and upright character. There must never be another Murong Lian." After everything was over, I returned to Sword Peak with the puppet Jiang Yun. I sat down cross-legged and began to examine myself and the path ahead. In fact, with my Mahayana stage cultivation, I had long since the opportunity to ascend to the immortal realm. I could even trigger the Ascension Tribulation at any time if I wanted to. However, precisely because I had struggled in the mortal world for so many years, rising step by step from the bottom, I had a deeper understanding than anyone else of the cruelty of the cultivation world. With a strong preyed on the weak, the hierarchy was strict, and there was no warmth to be found. Now I have reached the pinnacle in this realm, living a life of carefree abandon, roaming without fear. But what if after ascending, immortal realm true immortals are as common as dogs, and golden immortals are everywhere? Wouldn't my arduous ascension mean starting all over again, tucking my tail between my legs, and continuing to endure? The thought of that possibility makes me feel utterly bored, even unbearable. I finally struggled to reach a point where I can do as I please. Why should I go up there to make myself uncomfortable? Fortunately, the appearance of the puppet Jiang Yun has shown me a way out. The puppet Jiang Yun has an extraordinary physique and is qualified to become an immortal. I plan to refine him into an external avatar and start cultivating anew from scratch to the Mahayana stage. After that, I will have him ascend first and scout the way for me in the immortal realm. It won't be too late for me to ascend after my avatar has accumulated some wealth in the immortal realm.